Shaw Guild meeting. This is National Volunteer Week, and we really just couldn't miss the chance to get together and stay connected with you to celebrate. Now, before our world turned upside down a few weeks ago, we would have been meeting in the gallery behind the Royal George for a reception to celebrate National Volunteer Week. And we would have been mixing and mingling, and we would have been remembering all the wonderful experiences we had in 2019 that made it such a fantastic year for the Guild and for the Shaw. But that was then, and this is now. So what you got now, live, you get myself and my co-host, Brenda Weaver. Brenda is our activities chair, and normally she would have been planning that wonderful reception that we would be enjoying in the gallery space. So you got us now as hosts. Behind the scenes, we have two moderators. We have Cheryl Morris, who's our communication chair, and we have Mary Morris, who's our Guild secretary. And think of them as stage managers. They are totally in control of this broadcast. I'd like to say a very special thank you to Cheryl, because it's her inquisitiveness for all these new platforms that has got us to where we are today. And also I'd like to do a shout out to Laura Hughes, who is the senior communication manager at the Shaw. She has had experience with these platforms, and she's been so helpful in giving us all kinds of hints and tips for today. But it is our first time, so we're very anxious to see how it goes. And one of the things we would love to see as an audience when we're finished, if you have comments or suggestions, would you please drop us a note, info@shawguild.ca, because your feedback will really help us determine whether or not this is something kind of a venue we want to use in the future. So let me tell you how this is going to work. Fingers crossed. In just a couple of minutes, I'm going to turn the spotlight over to Brenda, who's going to introduce our guests, Tim Carroll and Tim Jennings. And what you're going to see as well is we have other members of our executive committee who wanted to thank you as well for all you do. And you're going to see their comments as banners on the bottom of the screen as we go through. So there's one right now from Alan. Tim and TC will come on, they will give remarks, they will answer questions. We have some already, but if you have joined through your YouTube account, then you can actually submit some live questions, and we'll get those to TC as well, and to Tim Jennings. When they're finished, on the other side, Brenda and I will be back, and we'll talk a bit about what the Guild is doing to get us through these challenging times. And then most importantly, at the very end, we're all gonna join in a toast to celebrate volunteers. So please make sure you've got some of your favorite refreshment handy. So Brenda, over to you.
Thanks, Lori. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be seen, I guess. I can't see you, but this is an exciting event. My task is to introduce two people who need no introduction to all of you. Joining us today virtually are Tim Jennings, the Executive Director of the Shaw, and Tim Carroll, Artistic Director, our two heroes. Welcome, Tim and TC, and thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon to be with us. And I'm going to invite them to speak to us. And as they share, as Lori said, you will see the questions come up and they will address those. So without further ado, take it away, Tim and TC.
Hi, all.
Hello.
Thank you. Before we get started, thank you all for all you do, and congratulations on National Volunteer Week. Fantastic. You guys are the world's best for sure. 13,500 hours last year. Amazing.
How much would that cost if we had to pay them, Tim?
You can't even begin, Tim. It's okay. $100,000 of worth of labor donation a year for sure. So thank you all. It's huge.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So our first question. Can you outline for us the Shaw's best and worst case scenarios for the 2020 season? You want me to try, or shall you take this one, sir?
This is probably easy enough for me. That some of the others are going to be entirely in your domain because they involve numbers and stuff. Best case scenario, of course, is the one that we're working to at the moment, where we're back in the building in a couple of weeks and we're up and running full speed July the 1st. With the season, just as though we had jumped on halfway through. That's it's not going to surprise you to hear that that's looking less and less likely with each day that passes, but we haven't given up on it yet. And the worst case scenario, of course, is also not very likely. The worst case scenario is that an asteroid hits the Shore Festival in 5 minutes' time and we all get pulverized. Between those 2 points is what's going to happen somewhere, and we may well be looking at a reduced autumn season. If we get in the autumn, that's probably the most likely, I would say. And then, of course, if we have to write off this year altogether because we're told to by the government, then the most likely scenario is a lift and drop, and this season becomes next season. There are various hybrid scenarios, but I'm not going to waste your time with them because I don't think many of them are very likely. And of course, we can all go around in circles imagining those. So that's the sort of the overview of the situation. Anything to add, Tim?
No, I think that's pretty good. Number two, if you decide to put on performances to smaller houses, how will patrons keep 6 feet apart? Well, maybe I will take this one. We can't really easily imagine a scenario where we'd be allowed to reopen multiple uses per day of an indoor mass gathering venue with a largely older audience until it's actually safe to do that. Seating apart isn't actually really the issue. It's a lack of ability to operate our washrooms and the lobbies and the conditions that don't allow you to be 6 feet apart, or it would cause a 90-minute intermission in between the performances while people struggle to go to the washroom and one at a time. The 2-meter distance issue in a theater really lets us only have about 17 to 20% of the seats in use at any time. So that's not really a sustainable model. That doesn't mean we wouldn't try some things like that. We've been playing around with all sorts of ideas about how to repurpose things like the studio theater or the courthouse, maybe, into smaller venues, but in the way that the normal shows run, that wouldn't happen. And so, we've thought of everything from sort of outdoor performances to smaller ideas to just running the George because it's a 300-seat venue and it's easier to sort of manage and clean for a little bit, all that sort of stuff. So many different scenarios, as TC said. Oh, is this another one for me? What is the Shaw's policy regarding 2020 season passes that have already been purchased? Well, right now, because we're still running the idea that we will be back up in July, we think that the season passes are still good. Of course, if that gets pushed out, just like any other ticket, they would be available to refund or donate or hold on account for next season and just use. We do have some thoughts at this point that maybe we'll try to extend the season pass to allow for some of the holiday shows if we have room there. So that's the likeliest scenario right now. How much time is needed to return to the stage once we get the go-ahead from public health? Tim, take it away.
Well, it depends how much we're returning, doesn't it? It would take us, I think, about 6 weeks to be up for July the 1st, which is why we made it that date, because we are aiming, if they allow us and if everyone feels safe, to get back in the middle of May. So I think it's about 6 weeks for a more or less full return. If we're talking about a smaller season in the autumn of 2 or 3 shows, then probably, because we picked 2 or 3 shows that were very close to being ready already, we would be probably able to do it in 3 or even 2 weeks from getting back in if we were really brisk.
I've heard that departments like wardrobe are doing things to help the community. Can you tell us what they're doing? Well, sure. So this is probably the best news story that we've got going on right now. About 30 of our wardrobe staff, the folks who can work from their home studios and things, are currently making gowns and masks and all sorts of other items for the public health units, both Niagara Public Health and Hospice Niagara. And then we have a bunch of other folks from all sorts of departments making masks and headbands and things for Burlington Health, Hamilton Health, wherever they live, basically. But on our payroll, currently, we have 30 full-time, effectively, folks churning out hundreds of gowns a week. And we're buying and donating all the fabric to do that as well, just to support our colleagues on the front lines. So. Oh, are there any ways Guild members can help? Well,
Hmm.
we're always looking for fabric. So, I mean, letting us know if you suddenly have large stashes of cotton or polycotton would be good. With that, if you're looking for how can the guild help generally, stay healthy, stay safe, and come back and help us as soon as we get back up and running. That's our real focus. And, that's my guess. Tim, anything else to that?
No, I just echo that and say just keep spreading the word that we are still here and that we're looking forward to playing for everyone, and keep doing that ambassadorial role that you keep doing so well. TC, will Mahabharat be performed in another season? Yes, definitely. Possibly in its own season. It's one of the options we're looking at because of the problems that Why Not will face with getting their performers from around the world, is that it might make sense to, for example, do a kind of pre-season in March or April of one of the next couple of years, where Mahabharat just runs as a 3 or 4 week run on its own. But either way, we're committed to it. It's a beautiful project and they're wonderful people.
Has the federal government provided you with details on the recently announced $5 million gift to the arts and culture? They haven't even provided the Canada Council that information yet, based on a comment from Simon Bro, who runs it as of today. So, but they have been told that the Canada Council is one of the agencies that will be distributing the money. So, so the answer to that is 100% no, sadly, at this point.
Although Justin was on the phone to me a minute ago and he told me, but he said keep it quiet. So
keep it quiet.
Sorry.
Will you be modifying the seating in the theaters? Well, I think we answered that earlier, but the general model is if there's a reason to do so, we will. But probably it won't really be safe to be back in theaters until it's safe to be back in theaters, if that makes sense. We were the first ones closed down and will likely be the last ones brought back up.
There's the consideration we looked at, what do you do? Maybe you sell every other seat or something, but of course that doesn't really solve the problem of someone behind you coughing on you or you coughing on someone in front of you. And then when you start thinking about 5 empty seats all around you, then you're going to have 3 men and a dog in the show. So,
and it's not really safe for the artists to be close to each other either at that point. So can you tell us more about the Be an Angel initiative and how you get involved? Yeah. Shall I jump on this?
Mary Hill.
Yes. Well, so the marvelous Mary Hill came to us with this idea to take somebody under your wing and check in on them on a daily basis, so that you choose someone who's isolated or struggling with anxiety or housebound, or you just simply reach out to somebody and make a compact to check in on them every day. The idea was that we may be distancing physically, but we're not alone and we are stronger together. So because of TC's very clear vision for the Shaw as the sort of center of all human connection, this is really a big deal for us. And Mary really locked into an idea we thought was really great, which is how do you find that person you wouldn't normally be in contact with and reach out and check in on them to make sure they don't fall through the cracks. And I think that's a really great idea. It probably means, the neighbor you're not so fond of, figuring out a way to talk to them and saying, hey, could you call me and I'll call you and we'll just check on each other.
My neighbor's not very nice to me, and he smiled and waved at me yesterday, so something's going on. But I should also mention Suzanne Hebert and many members of the guild who are, of course, already ferrying pharmacies and groceries and so on. And so you're already being angels in many cases, and it's really beautiful.
Hear, hear. Will the actors living in Shaw housing be allowed to stay as this drags on?
Drags on, yeah.
Yes, if they want to. How are the actors doing, TC?
They're being remarkable, actually. I mean, of course, everyone has their own level of anxiety or stress, depending on their family situation. And, it's not easy for some of them being away from their family home or base. So I wouldn't say they're all doing as well as everyone else, but as a whole, they are really looking out for each other, and they come along to all the ensemble classes. I did another one this morning, packed out on Zoom, and they come to see the run-throughs of Charlie's Aunt and send each other supportive messages. And And Peter Fernandez, for instance, I just saw him waving at the in my garden. He's dropped something at my front door, which I'm very much hoping is going to have chocolate in it. So I would say they're doing tremendously well.
What are other theater companies doing? That's a good question. I'm on daily conversations with theaters all over North America and beyond, and we're among the unique, maybe handful. I mean, I suppose there might be 4 or 5 of us total, but just talking to another ensemble rep company in the States who have 8 actors in their ensemble, who are still keeping them on payroll as well for another 25 days, I gather. So, but the general sense is that most people have come down. They've laid off their teams. They've laid off a lot of their staff. Now in Canada with CWS starting to come in, people are starting to look to rehire employees, but actors and musicians aren't employees, they're self-contracting, and so there's a different problem there that we've been trying to solve with the government. One of the reasons that 500 million was put into play, as well as CERB allowing people to earn some money. So there's a bunch of new programs that we're trying to figure out as well, but right now we're keeping everybody on, and we were able to make some different choices. We have an ensemble company, so we're focused on them and that work. We have remarkable donors and patrons who continue to give to us at the right levels and to be able to continue helping us pay our team. And we lucked out. Roy Reeves and I 3 years ago took out a disaster insurance policy that included pandemic, and that's allowed us to make some different choices. It won't make us totally whole, but it will help. And that's also an almost unique thing in the theater. I think there's one other theater company in Canada with that. So
it's not quite fair to say we lucked out. We lucked out because we had you and Roy who made a really great decision.
Well, we just saw the risk of actually not the risk of pandemic, the risk of 20 people in the company getting the flu and having to be down for 2 weeks, and so that was our thought. The fact that it's going to turn out to be more beneficial than that was the lucky part, I guess. So anyway. Oh, that's kind. How are we doing? How are you doing, Tim?
I'm very well. I think it's easier for me than for most people because I have a lot to do. So I go to bed exhausted and sleep very well because I've spent all day running around doing things and writing emails. I spend too much time staring at this, so occasionally my eyes feel really by the end of the day. But everything would be all right in my world if I had my kids on this side of the Atlantic and if my mum wasn't in a nursing home in France. But apart from that, neither of which I can do anything about, I'm very well. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'd say similarly. I'm what's the word I'm looking for? Overly busy. I think I'm probably doing 10 or 12-hour days every day of the week at this point. But that's what's needed right now, and honestly, it feels very productive. So, like I think Tim's, I would echo that. Truly and Zachary are both home and doing well, so I have them both here, and Truly's working on gowns for the hospitals and hospices, and Zachary just finished his first-year exams for university and is about 10 days from starting his online job with CIBC in their network security division. So his first summer gig. So I'm excited for both of those things. Yes, we have 10 shows rehearsing virtually at the moment. Absolutely. So I am to understand that virtual rehearsals are happening. Yes, every production except Mahabharata is currently in Zoom rehearsals. Tim, you can expand.
Well, I mean, we're all at different stages. So Charlie's Aunt, it was only a question of going into previews, really. So we've done a couple of run-throughs for ourselves, and as you know, we've shown you a couple of acts, and we're going to show you Act 3 on Friday. Other shows hadn't even begun rehearsal when we started, so it's very different for a company who are just starting on Zoom. Obviously, it's a bit weird because they can't get to know each other and sniff each other out properly. But on the other hand, the beginning of rehearsals for many directors is quite a talky time, so that might be easier in a way. Certainly, those directors who want to get everyone up on their feet and play the scene in the space are now at a point where they're frustrated in that wish, and we're having a lot of fun with how you make entrances and exits on Zoom. You will have seen in Charlie's Aunt there's a certain amount of fun to be had in handing someone a flower, and then that person takes the flower in their own kitchen and the flower has magically changed color. So, you know, we've tried as far as possible to think, what are the ways to rehearse that aren't just a frustratingly rubbish version of the real thing, but really respond to the new reality. And some of us now are at the point, I would say, where it's time to sort of say, okay, we're ready now, or we are as far as we can be. It's time to put that into cold storage and maybe get on with practicing for things like tonight, the cabaret. Maybe get on with some of the other work that we can be doing while we're still stymied.
The experience of seeing rehearsals online was wonderful. Any thoughts of doing more of this generally?
I don't know what you mean by seeing rehearsals online. You might have seen I suppose, a first day of someone's rehearsal or a read through. We can do it a little bit, but not much more, because, as I say, I don't think we're going to be rehearsing much more. So we're trying to give our people an insight into what we are doing. It is, whenever you have something that is rehearsal, it is still quite delicate, and the actors don't respond the same way when they know that 100 people are watching, or even one person is watching, as they do when they're in private. So that's always an interesting balance. And I think the nice thing for me was that the Charlie's Aunt runs that we've done have been nerve-wracking for the actors. So that is where you're terribly useful, because your presence provides exactly the stress and the anxiety that they want at that point, but they don't necessarily want that in week one. So there's no offense meant in that. Of course, I know that even someone as scowly as Suzanne, whose default setting is one of absolute horror and bemusement, is in fact enjoying herself and having a great time. But we try telling that to the actors who look at her.
There you are.
I'm going to be in such trouble with her now. I can just see
there'll be a rock through your window any minute. Oh, Guild, end of the question period. Well, it turns out that was the way you ended that. There we go.
Oh, there you go. But listen, it's been really beautiful seeing you all at those Charlie's Aunt rehearsals, and I know that you are a wonderful audience for anything that you get to see. So I do hope we can give you more insight and access to what we're doing. That's very much my intention.
And for all of you doing for us, it's so helpful, and it's so nice to hear all of you writing in and saying wonderful things, and we get lots of lovely notes. It's been great. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Tim and TC. And we are thrilled to hear about what's happening behind the scenes, if there were scenes. So on behalf of all the Guild members, we want to let you know that we are so appreciative of how thoughtful and intentional and compassionate you've been in your approach to an unprecedented challenge. We've recently heard from so many Guild members who are touched and moved by your very human and deeply kind response to the situation in which we find ourselves. So you are exemplary captains, and the company, by extension the Guild, are very fortunate to have you at the helm, and this ship will prevail. That we will all get through this together is in no small part due to your vision and your strength. So from our hearts, from all of us, a million thanks.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So appreciated. See you at the cabaret. And now over to Lori, who will give us an update on what's happening at the Guild.
We're back. Thank you. We wanted just to give you just a quick update, because you've heard a lot about what the Shaw's doing, and we've obviously been doing a few things at the Guild to make sure we make it through these trying times as well. We formed a team, which we call the V team, V for virus, but victory as well, which is what we'll all be celebrating when this all comes to an end. So we've been monitoring and tracking, and we've been staying very, very close to the Shaw, and particularly to TC and to Tim Jennings and to their team. And I just like to echo what Brenda said. Even with all the things that are on their plates, these guys have had time for us, for our questions, and for information. So Leadership is always important, but we have real heroes in those two guys, so we thank them very much. There are a couple of key dates that they're monitoring, and we are as well. So just quickly, the province of Ontario, the emergency basically extends, and it's supposed to expire on May the 12th, and that's the one that controls the non-essential workers returning to the workplace, as well as the size and restrictions on gatherings. Niagara-on-the-Lake has its own state of emergency, and they have extended all of facilities and public events closed until June the 30th. And as you heard, and as I'm sure you know, the Shaw, basically all performances through till the end of June. We've had to cancel the garden tour and the Scent, Savor and Stroll, the Friday evening event, and that was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking for everyone, and particularly for the people who put so much time and effort into that. Suzanne Hébert and her teams from the gardens, selecting gardens and the sponsorship. Ticket sales were going really well. In fact, the Friday evening event had sold out as of March. So, however, we're just going to, not all that effort is obviously going to be wasted. It's all going to be put back together again to put on a spectacular garden tour for 2021. So we've been focusing on those kind of decisions. We've also been focusing on communications. I think, as you know, the newsletters, which used to come out once a month, are now coming out every 2 weeks and giving hopefully all the latest information. When we know it, you will know it. And the website is basically the repository for everything that we have to tell you. So if you miss an announcement, please just go to shawguild.ca and you'll find everything there. As well as communications, we're also always looking for ways to keep everybody engaged and connected, because that's so important until we get back to our volunteer roles. So we welcome your stories. We love to get your pictures. We love to figure out what you guys are doing to stay busy. So please keep those coming. We love innovative ideas. And speaking of innovation, Brenda, I know, has been practicing her poetry. So Brenda, why don't you share with us what you've been up to?
Okay. It's time to direct our attention towards you. And this event is to honor you, the volunteers who support the Guild with your time, your hearts, your efforts, your finances. And we asked the executive members to communicate their feelings to you, and you've seen those go across the bottom of the screen. And as Lori said, I have a little poem for you before we toast to you, with apologies to Dr. Seuss. My friends, said the Shaw, you are very fine friends. You've helped all the folks in the company no end. You've greeted our patrons, you've done tours galore, you've tended our gardens, you've hosted, and more. You meant what you said, and you said what you meant. A volunteer's faithful, 100%. And so if I can have Lori back, if Lori could join me in a toast, we are going to raise our glasses and toast to you. So here we go. Cheers to our volunteers.
We miss you, and we can't wait to get back to see you at the Shaw. So please join us. Cheers to volunteers, and particularly cheers to volunteers at the Guild.
Indeed. We hope to see you later on this evening at the cabaret. Well, we won't see you, but we hope you're there. And I'm sure you've had an announcement about that so far. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon into the evening. And we wish you we wish you a wonderful evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.